The Jazz finally make the trade with the Hawks for John Collins. Was it a good trade? Let's talk about it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, let's get right into this. The Jazz have just traded for John Collins. Let's just take a look at the details. The Jazz trade a future second-round pick, that's 2026, and Rudy Gay for John Collins. Let's just first look at this from the Hawks' point of view, and then we will talk about the Jazz. I can tell you that. For the Hawks, this was salary cap relief. I'm sure they did not want to get rid of John Collins for what looks like very little. Basically, this was them getting rid of John Collins' contract. It allows them to open things up so that they can either re-sign guys on their team like DeJounte Murray or someone else, or they can go find someone else. But it just clears cap space for them because they had a lot of money put into a lot of different players, and they had to figure out who they are going to sign, and they've just got to basically get their cap under control, which it was not. With John Collins making $78 million over the next 3 years, they just needed to find a way to get that off their books because I guess they just did not feel like John Collins was a part of the future. Now, let's talk about the Utah Jazz. This 2026 second-round pick, according to Tony Jones, is protected. So it's not even an unprotected 2026 second-round pick. And I know it has a chance to be pretty good, according to what Tony Jones is saying, but it's still protected. So the Jazz likely might even be able to keep that pick if they want. But it's a second-round pick. It's not even a first-round pick. So the Jazz get rid of both Rudy Gay's contract, a player who did not play well for them last year, and all they have to give up is a second-round pick for John Collins. Pretty incredible. Now, the first thing we've got to talk about is John Collins is an incredible athlete. He is one of the premier dunkers in the league, absolute above-the-rim athlete who has also been a good shooter in his career. Now, the one thing to consider for Utah, and partly why the Hawks might be more willing to move on from John Collins than than keeping him, was the shooting. John Collins, for his career, had been a good three-point shooter. You see here, he starts off his career in his first 2 seasons, 34-34, but then jumps in his third year, 40%, fourth year, just under 40%, and then 36% the season after. Last year, though, you see a dip. He was at 29%. And the thing that people worry about with him is he had broken his hand or something along those lines, some sort of hand injury. And ever since then, the three-point shooting wasn't the same. Now, if the Jazz get John Collins and they get the athleticism, and they also get a John Collins, if he can get his shooting back to 36% or more, this is an absolute steal. And my guess is he will be able to figure that out. Whatever happens, I'm guessing that he's just not forgotten how to shoot. Unless something has been absolutely destroyed in his hand, we shall see. But if he can get that shooting stroke back, and then you combine that with the athleticism, the rebounding, it's exciting. Now, the other thing to think about is there was an interview about a year ago when Kevin Huerter got traded to Sacramento. He was actually on, I believe it was the Ryan Russillo podcast, talked about the Hawks. He said that, Trae Young, he didn't say anything bad, but he also held his tongue and didn't say a lot of things about Trae Young that were, great either. He called him a good player, and that was about all he said. It was interesting that during that interview with Ryan Russillo, Kevin Huerter made a point to talk about John Collins and that he could provide more, that he was better than what you probably saw in Atlanta. That's one thing that's interesting with John Collins. We know that the dunks, and they're going to be ferocious. It's going to be incredible. We know he can shoot the three, but basically being on the team with Trae Young on the Hawks, a lot of his role on offense was either catching lobs or shooting threes and just kind of waiting to get the pass from Trae Young. There's a world where he does a little bit more. We know he has kind of a little mid-range game. We've seen John Collins be able to post up a little bit. We've also seen John Collins get a triple-double in the past, in his rookie season. The guy can pass the ball. If he's on this Jazz team, I could see the ball moving through him a lot more. And just if he's able to pass the ball and move the ball within the offense, that can take his game to another level. He can do different things with the ball. And he might come to Utah and really enjoy it with a more open offense with Will Hardy, who was an offensive revelation last season. Danny Ainge did it. Danny Ainge really fleeced another team. A second-round pick for John Collins. They had been talking about this trade for about a year, if not more. We had heard John Collins rumors. But remember when they were talking about trading Rudy Gobert? They talked about trading John Collins to the Jazz for Rudy Gobert. Well, Danny Ainge makes the trade of the century to the Wolves, and then he gets John Collins for a second-round pick. This is a masterclass in GMing. He has absolutely broken the league again, because guess what? Now teams are out there seeing like the Jazz got John Collins for a second-round pick, a salary dump, and all we can get is a second-round pick. Remember the Jazz when they salary dumped Derek Favors before under Dennis Lindsey, and it took a first-round pick that's next season? So Utah, the Jazz, like Danny Ainge showed Dennis Lindsey how it's done, because this Jazz team right now is still paying for a salary dump done for Derek Favors years ago. The way Danny Ainge has come into this Jazz team and changed things in an incredible way with what this Jazz team will be is remarkable. Now, think about this, the offensive lineup for this Jazz team and the depth. I think it's a question mark of who will start at point guard. Someone, you can let me know in the comments who you think, but whether it's Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson, THT, or possibly Keontae George, one of those four players is going to start at point guard. Your shooting guard is likely Ochai Agbaji. Your small forward is Lauri Markkanen. And your power forward is now John Collins with Walker Kessler backing him up. That is a fun starting lineup. I don't know who's starting at point guard. And then you think about the bench. You have Taylor Hendricks that you just drafted. He is coming off the bench. You have Bryce Sensabaugh, who's coming off the bench. Keontae George, likely coming off the bench. How much athleticism and shooting is on this Jazz team? If John Collins gets that stroke back, this Jazz team is going to absolutely shoot the lights out. And then you have Walker Kessler, who is going to be a defensive player of the year candidate for the rest of his career and will definitely be all defense. What's crazy about this is the shooting, the athleticism, and then also just the versatility. I was talking about it a few days ago. I'm not quite sure what the Jazz are going to do with backup center. Well, now it might be John Collins and Taylor Hendricks. You'll have lineups for this Jazz team where you have Walker Kessler starting, and then, you have a standard pick and roll offense, and then you'll have offenses where you have John Collins and Taylor Hendricks, and you have a 5-out offense. So someone like Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton, who we haven't even talked about, who will also get a chance to start, will be in a 5-out offense with shooting everywhere. This Jazz team is going to be flamethrower on offense, and then defense, they're going to be super athletic. And then let's just forget about transition. This team is going to absolutely score in so many different ways. I wouldn't be surprised if this Jazz team wins 50 games next year and is easily a playoff team. Guys, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. Let's give a shout out to our all-stars. Let's give a shout out to Christian House Money to Huss, Baby Elliott Matson, Ezekiel Ricebe, the man from down under, See Ya Lexalator, Built Ford Tufts, Alexander Tufts, Jorge Arrizaga, mi amigo de abajo, Jordan the Goat Besserell, TGD Total Game Domination, Tyson Price, The Price is Right, X marks the spot for Zintas, Austin R. Grant, Editor Extraordinaire, DW to CB, Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer, Patrick Kakuba, the Connoisseur, and Robert Hall of Fame. Oh, ye generation of vipers, who of you hath warned of the wrath to come, said John the Baptist, baby. Like and subscribe. I'll talk to you next time.